20th anniversary annual meeting. Really excited to be here. Thanks to you all for coming. I want to go over our agenda and what we'll do today. And thanks to all of our member co-ops for having fun pictures that we can involve here. We're just going to welcome and gather now and get to announce our board election results that just finished. We'll have our board report, our impact report, which will feature Artem, our intern who's with us today. Thank you for waving, Artem. And then we're going to have a dialogue on opportunity to own and fighting repression through cooperation. We'll close out with our 2025 VOC annual awards, and then we'll have some closing remarks. I'd like to thank our sponsors, especially now with everything that's going on. We're really thankful for these sponsors for supporting this event and supporting our work. We find a number of mission overlap with these organizations, and we're really thankful. Thanks to all our lead sponsors. And then, of course, thanks to all our sponsors. And a special shout out to Collective Copies, who has been kind enough to sponsor and give us printing in kind for years, which we use every year. Okay, I'm so excited to announce our board results. We had 3 seats open for cooperative member directors. That is, representation from our members, our owners and members, and then 1 stakeholder seat too. And I'm happy to say that we had Charity, Larissa, and Ethan all re-elected. And there were 3 seats open. 1 seat had a 1-year term, 2 had 2-year terms. Larissa and Ben both elected to 2-year terms. Charity was elected to a 1-year term. Thank you and congratulations. And then Ethan Tupelo is our stakeholder director, and we have stakeholder directors help us with our strategy, people who are familiar with and or support our mission, and we're really happy to have Ethan on board, who's been doing a ton of state level representation for us as well, and we'll get to that in a moment. While we're on board, I want to say thank you to our current board, Larissa, Charity, and Ethan, and we're going to have our board report from our chair, Larissa Demos. And I just want to introduce Larissa because there's a lot of work that goes unseen by Larissa. We talk a lot. She's very patient that we don't talk as much as we probably should because of me and my schedule. Larissa has worked for a number of cooperatives and is a founding member at Flatiron. So Larissa, please join us. Wait, you're muted.
I know I'm muted. Now I've got that. I don't know what else to say. That's like a wonderful introduction. So unless you want me to get into the board report or just wait on that.
Jump right in.
Okay. All right. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here. We're really excited that we've been celebrating 20 years of working towards a cooperative economy. In our past year, we held an in-person retreat to reflect on our successes and lessons. Our members shared ideas, direction, and goals to build an even better next 20 years. We will be able to support these aspirations with a grant provided by One Project, who has a similar vision of a world beyond capitalism, which is even more important today given our current political and economic climate. We are also thrilled to be supporting our 10th conversion to a worker-owned cooperative, Nubbernaut, and increase our membership to 7 worker-owned cooperatives for this year. We are continuing to support legislative engagement by drafting policy in Massachusetts that would allow workers to buy out the businesses they work at if they are being sold or closing. With our support of Co-op Principle 5, Education, Training, and Information, and our Education Fund, we provided partial scholarships to 2 worker owners from Pedal People to attend the United States Federation of Worker Co-op National Conference in Chicago. And we would like to thank you, our member cooperatives, for your consistency in supporting BOC, which makes our purpose of building a cooperative future moving forward, along with our affiliates and partners who allow us to combine our efforts and achieve shared missions.
Thanks, Larissa. Does anybody have any questions for Larissa before we move on to the impact report? Just want to thank Larissa and the rest of the board. There's a ton of work that goes on behind the scenes, from our budget and what we do for legislation and grants and everything, that the board is just kind of does a lot of great work, and a lot of it goes unrecognized. So I just want to thank you all for that. So to move forward, we are going to go to our impact report. I'll just be talking to you for a couple of minutes about our activities, and we'll also feature Artem in a moment. So our first thing is about education, and education has been a huge part of what the Valley Alliance has done since our start. A number of us learned about cooperatives, including me, in educational areas where I learned about co-ops from Julie Graham in 1999 at UMass. And this year has been a great year for us. We hosted 2 interns, including Artem. We also had a lot of activity for our workshop series. This year we focus on training new members, which itself is education. Larissa already talked about the scholarships we gave out, and we also feature Mastermind, a session during our member meetings where any cooperator can talk about the challenges they're facing. And I think to the extent that VOC is successful, it's because of our peer-to-peer support and the trust that worker cooperators have among each other. I did want to focus a little bit on the program that brings Artem to us today, where in 2008, Nancy Fowbray, who's now a professor emeritus at UMass Department of Economics, wrote a blog about worker cooperatives. And we started meeting with them in 2008, formed an internship program by 2010. Then Mark and Anastasia became the first certificate recipients. And we've had dozens of interns just for VOC since 2010, and we are lucky enough to work with the neighboring Food Co-op Association in supporting their certificate. Hundreds of students learning about co-ops at UMass, and it's been great. Noah did some great work with us last year, really helping us and helping me get a bunch of input and feedback for our strategic planning session, which we held in September in honor of our 20th anniversary. So we did a lot of work to figure out what people liked about our first 20 years and what to keep, and then a lot of work to figure out what we want for the next years to happen, and Noah was huge for that. I also want to introduce Artem, who's done a ton of work this semester. He's a self-starter. He's been really helpful. Very happy to work with you, Artem. So please introduce yourself, and then we'll start on your slides.
Hi, can you hear me good, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Artem. I'm actually an exchange student from Ukraine. I came to UMass only for one academic year. First of all, I would like to say that I'm very grateful for such opportunity. Thank you, Wag, and thank you, Artem, for giving me for letting me an opportunity to know about co-ops from the inside by becoming a part of it. Yeah, so this semester was very exciting. I'm very grateful to work. I really find out a lot about it, and I hope my input was helpful too. So let's start with our first task that I was doing, and I gathered a lot of data. I worked a lot with Google Sheets, but right now we want to focus on our total charitable contribution value, total surplus, and inter-cooperatives purchases. This is going to be on the next slide, and also in VOC members purchases. And as we can see clearly that despite the COVID-19, the recession, and all other problems, VOC has showed that they successfully managed to increase each year, especially in such values. And it's not only about revenue and profit, it's also about the input to other cooperatives, because we can see that especially last years, to compare what was in 2008 and what now, it's a huge jump and huge increase in help to other co-ops. You will see on the next slide, we gathered data about inter-cooperative purchases and purchases among VOC members, especially the purchases among VOC members. It's a significant increase in it, and we can see that VOC is not only an organization that receives profit and helps. I mean, it's not profit organization, but it's not only financially beneficial, but also beneficial to other co-ops. And I feel what I have learned during my class of economics of cooperative enterprise is that the good successful cooperatives should cooperate between each other, among each other, and from the data we gathered, we can see it. And like the second part of my internship, it was, I would say, like comparing two researches with better people. One that was like 2011, another on a database in 2024. First of all, I learned how to use ePlan. I have never heard about it, and I am very happy to have opportunity to learn how to use it because it's a very interesting software. And while writing the report, the research, and comparing to what was in 2011 and what we have now, again, I can see that better people has increased like its economic impact on the local community and also increased the environmental impact in a good way. Actually, while writing, I have a thought, maybe it's like just creative pollution or something, but and because they do not, because their concept is using bikes instead of cars, what it helps them to save the environment, but it's not only more pollution, but I would say their impact, how much they increased and improvement of the work they have done, and even like we can see in this research is like much more elaborated with many other values, but one of the examples is that in 2011 it was 75,000 of CO2 and saved by better people by the activity. And from the data from 2024 is 3.1 million pounds.
Yeah,
And
this
also
is
they
great.
created,
Oh,
yeah, and also they
sorry.
created like they also from this research they also created twice as more jobs for the community. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so
Artem.
much.
And I just wanted to add a couple of things to Artem's thoughts. And one is that we're still working on the details on the pedal people in plan work that Artem did. And it's really fantastic to have kind of two snapshots over time of what pedal people is doing. And it really is impressive, I think, of your environmental impact. And I believe in a world where we all use pedal people. I also just wanted to briefly go over these other two charts just really briefly. If you had told me back in 2008 that the Valley Alliance members, just the current ones, would have almost $250,000 in other co-op purchases, I wouldn't have believed you. And I know that the number for the total purchases between VOC members is not that high. I do think that there's some that happens that isn't reported, but I'm really happy about the last 2 years being really high. And I think that that's going to continue. In fact, I'm pretty sure, I'm very confident that it will continue. Also, just really briefly on the charitable contributions and surplus, I just want to thank our members for being leaders in supporting systems that are creating more cooperatives. We'll have time for a Q&A with Artem and Larissa later, but I just wanted to thank Artem so much for the work you did leading this and getting this done. It's been fantastic. I'm going to go over just a couple more things. No, thank you, Artem. It's been really great, and looking forward to staying in touch with you. We had a couple other things, and then we'll get to our dialogue on legislation. We also do a lot of work raising awareness, not just about worker cooperatives, but about any kind. And in October, which is Cooperative Month, National Co-op Month, we work with a number of other partners to do printed material, radio ads that talk about cooperatives, and also to be on Bill Newman's annual co-op forum, which is now 2 hours because there's so many people that he had to double the amount of time that we have. And then again, we're just about to talk about some of the statewide dialogue. We wanted to give a brief financial report, and there's no details about finances here, although we're happy to talk about those. Our actual report will be coming out soon. And just to focus on two things. One is that we really prioritize long-term financial planning to try to be here through changes. This did help during COVID, and we try to stay active to have people and cooperatives be able to come to us for long-term planning, regardless regardless of what's going on in the market at that time. So just a couple of highlights from our financial report. As Larissa mentioned, we did get funding from one project to increase our budget and capacity this year. We're using that on a number of things, including supporting the conversion for Nubbernaut and other legislative activities. A couple of other pieces of the financial report is that we've got now more than $34,000 in our VOC fund. That started as just a dream. It's done 4 loans out directly to members. It's also invested in cooperative funds. We have a direct loan out right now to one of our members. It's in good standing. We built reserves up for 9 or almost 10 months of our average annual budget in case there are any challenges out there. We're able to still stay at capacity. And we've got almost $50,000 invested in funds regionally and nationally. And also, we're happy to say that we use cooperatives for our banking and investments. And then CFNE, we're really proud to work regionally with them. Okay, the last one for our activities before we get to leading up on the dialogue is that we do a lot of work on developing worker cooperatives. Obviously, peer-to-peer support is what we believe in. That's who we are. That's what we do. And again, to the degree that the Valley Alliance is successful, it's because members have developed trust and collaborations with each other. Really happy about Nubbernaut. That's going great. We've got resources now because of our last year's workshop on policy specifically for worker cooperatives, and we've worked with partners on some of those. We wrote some ourselves, and again, we did new training this year. We've got a lot of other irons in the fire for development, but just know that we are working on this. It's a huge priority. Okay, for our dialogue, we've got a couple minutes intro, and then we'll work on dialogue with Ethan and Sarah. But I just wanted to do a little intro on this because I see there's a lot going on nationally. Obviously, major crisis for a lot of the people in our communities. A lot of people we care about a lot are under a lot of strain and danger right now. And a lot of the people we want working for the government are no longer working for them. I've got 2 friends who are working in the federal government supporting cooperatives, and they're no longer there. And right now, I want to bring 2 things to the discussion. One is that cooperatives are no stranger to repression. And in fact, some of the best models we have came out of crisis. I wanted to highlight those to give us a little hope. And the second thing is, during this time of national crisis for us, I think is opportunity for local work to get done. So we've got a couple of examples on that. I'm not going to go through every slide with you in detail, but cooperatives have been a part of many movements to support working and poor people to gain access to important services and products that they need to live. Housing, jobs, banking services, that's credit unions, housing co-ops, working co-ops, food co-ops have been fighting for food security for centuries and more. And then whether it's Tennessee Valley Authority or NRECA, the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, utilities are also an important part of what cooperatives provide to the country. I wanted to just go over a couple of these, and we did see some of this during the workshop we did last month. Just a couple of takeaways. I know a lot of people talk about Rochdale all the time. A couple of takeaways. One, they were formed during rapid industrialization. Unemployment was sometimes 60%. Income was sometimes 30% of what it had been before industrialization. It was the first part in recorded history in Europe where women could own property. This was not something that automatically went to the family or the husband. Then it was also something where they boycotted. Oops, sorry, I'm just going to mute you because we get a little echo there. There were boycotts of cotton coming from the United States because it was made by slaves, so they did not use that. Anyway, there's a lot of great things that came out of Rochdale, including them kind of having a real priority of a cross-industrial and cross-sector economy. Worker cooperatives, of course we care about this. And everybody talks about Mondragon, but I just wanted to share, if you know the art Guernica by Pablo Picasso, you have seen the outcome of what the Mondragon group had to sustain, which was bombing from its own government on its own people as a show of support for the fascist cause in Europe in the 30s and 40s. I was lucky enough to go to Mondragon and Guernica in 2008, and it's a very moving, very important thing. Just a couple of takeaways from there. Mondragon, that region was discluded, disenfranchised actively from the Spanish system of government, and they had to form their own. So out of that crisis came the Mondragon system, probably the greatest example of worker cooperation in the world. There's a lot of others. Housing cooperatives, and we covered this last month with the workshop, but I just wanted to have in here that the arson capital of the world in the 1970s was the Bronx. There were over 2,400 fires in a year. People came together in many instances, and in this one, the Banana Kelly Community Improvement Association started with one building. They introduced sweat equity and low equity cooperatives to the city. It became a program so successful that they had laws to protect it, and actually laws to include it. Right now, 2% of the total Manhattan housing units are covered by HDFCs. I think that's a huge amount. The Emilia-Romagna part of Italy also founded and strengthened during fascist regimes. In 1947, during a rebuild from World War II, they got cooperatives, social and economic benefits into the Constitution of Italy. And while that might sound general, it paved the way for more legislation, some of which we adopted. In 1994, Italy Co-op said you had to give 3% of surplus to development, and all VOC members give 5% of surplus to development. That's our fund. I wanted to go over credit unions a little bit because they've been there for us in a lot of cases. Just a couple slides, and then we'll go right into the dialogue for opportunity to own. Global history is that this was another tool used by people in poverty and trying to struggle by to access banking services. So loans for simple things, mortgages, all that kind of stuff, because banks didn't work with anyone who wasn't rich. There wasn't money in it. It was really only the past 150 years where credit unions even existed. And in 1908, the first one in the United States happened because of a partnership with Desjardins, which is a credit union that is in Canada. And then, so this programming was so successful that the New Deal included it in 1934 as part of the Federal Credit Union Act. And that spawned a real important movement that has become something where 10% of banking assets in the country are owned by credit unions, yet they service 40% of adults. Now, a lot of adults also have bank accounts, but there's so much being done with just that 10%. I think it's an important component for us to see. So again, during crisis, during industrialization, during poverty-stricken times, people joined together. And then Father John Peter Sullivan from Charlestown brought more strength to cooperatives in the Boston area and also the Caribbean. And I want to say that I was also fortunate enough to visit the Caribbean credit union system, where there's density of 80 to 90% in some places, the Dominican Republic, St. Kitts, Nevis. It's such a strong component of what they do down there. I also wanted to mention that we partner with both Freedom and UMass 5. UMass 5 is a great part of UCBA. Freedom sponsors this, as does UMass 5. Both take commercial accounts. They have to fight the bank lobby every year for something, and they limit how much work you can have with commerce to 12.5%. Anyway, also both were founded by groups of workers. UMass 5, famously found by a handful of workers at UMass, and there's a lot of work that happens, of course, from there to now, but that was a group of workers making UMass something where they could just stay, have their money more retained. Freedom Credit Union, that was also found by workers from the Western Mass Telephone Company. That has become a regional cooperative. So we're really thankful for them. And then I just saw in the chat, 90%. Yes, I know. And just one more thing on credit unions in the Caribbean, they hand out patronage. They distribute patronage. When I was there, I visited with the CEO of one of the credit unions there. He was so proud to tell me he was delivering 8% patronage to their members, and this was in 2015. So that's something they do. I have a couple of slides in here about larger history that we'll include in the slideshow and send out. I just really want to thank UMass 5 and Freedom. I want to mention that UMass 5 is the recipient of the Emilia-Romagna Valley Alliance of Worker Cooperatives Award. I think more prestigious than the Best of the Valley, but that's up to them. I also included a couple of slides from Freedom. Thank you to both of them for including this, and we're so happy we get to work with them and have them in our region. I also think it's impressive how they strategize to improve their service. Okay, I want to thank Ethan and Sarah, both of whom are here right now, to focus on legislation. So we held back our usual talk about legislation during the report because right now there's an example of worker cooperatives facing crisis, working effectively with partners to try to advance legislation and make the world a better place in whatever way we can, regionally, nationally, but in this case, statewide, to try to advance legislation to support worker buyouts. Right now, we're going to hear from Ethan and Sarah. I just wanted to go over a brief timeline. Ethan and Sarah, please add to this. But as far as Vox is concerned, we supported a number of policy recommendations dating back to 2014, including what we were calling then right of first refusal, but changing and adapting to use opportunity to own. We communicated needs and goals to many partners, including, and again, I'm so glad, Sarah, you could be here because I want you to talk about your organization and us being a member of the coalition, and also to have Buck say that we wanted regional and statewide dialogue, and we're thankful for Ethan to represent us there. Okay, Sarah, Ethan, welcome. Thank you for your time today. Sarah is one of the co-directors. You're a little demure about the title of Coalition for Worker Ownership and Power. Also has cooperative roots, literally and figuratively, and I'll let you introduce yourself in a second, both of you. Ethan Tupelo, who I first met as a member of Pedal People, is now teaching at Boston College. So both people with great roots in the worker cooperative world, both advancing legislation now. So anyway, Sarah, please introduce yourself, and then we'll do the same thing with Ethan, and we'll keep going.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Adam, for the warm welcome. And what an honor to stand beside Ethan, presenting Opportunity to Own that has deep roots in the Valley Alliance for Worker-Owned Cooperatives. Your work and organizing of co-ops and policy to support co-ops and finance to support co-ops is awesome. And I would love to see that model grow across the Commonwealth and beyond. So kudos to what you're up to. Is my camera working normally for you all?
Yes. Yeah, it's
Okay,
working great.
Great. I can't see
and-
myself, so that's great. I also would love to shout out Ren and Matthew, who've been working with us to develop the language of this bill. And it's been a beautiful bottom-up collaborative process across a couple of years. So I'll just share just a little bit about the Coalition for Worker Ownership and Power. We're so happy that, you know, we are cooperating our networks for common cause, and we are definitely stronger together when we speak with one voice for worker ownership. So the Coalition for Worker Ownership and Power is been around for, I think, somewhere between 5 and 7 years now. I should probably count. But we're a multi-stakeholder coalition, and that makes us different. As a multi-stakeholder coalition, it's really important to us that we have worker owners centered in our coalition in key decision-making moments, like deciding our policy platform, in key decision-making places, like in our steering committee. And it was wonderful to have Charity from Oxbow Design and Build, an active steering committee member for I think 1.5 years after participating in the Rise to Own It process with Carl. And it was really wonderful doing some listening, statewide listening with worker owners and aspiring worker owners across the state in 2022 and 2023. And out of that, we came up with a theory of change for how we can collectively build out the worker ownership ecosystem. And in this theory of change, we know that many things are required. So strategic partnerships are key. Cooperative networks are key, like yours. Co-op to co-op, cooperation is key. But we also need to visibilize the co-op actors in our network, and policy makes a huge difference. So changing the environment in which we cooperate is really important, as well as the co-op to co-op relationships that we have, and also the relationships within the institutions that we build. So how can we be building cooperative culture in our communities, transparency, participatory decision-making, and benefit sharing. That culture, that visibility, the policy, and the practice of worker ownership. So Valley Alliance is particularly strong. VOC is particularly strong with the practice of worker ownership. And so we admire you. It's great cooperating. I'll just share a little bit about this bill, some of the origins of the bill, and then Ethan can talk about the details of the bill, as he has done in Mass CEO, and then maybe Ren and Matthew might share a little bit more. But yes, as you see here, opportunity to own at a glance. I'll let Ethan go through this, but I just want to talk about a little bit of the backstory. So, Rise to Own It was a convening of worker owners and aspiring worker owners in 2022 and 2023. The theory of change came out of that, and we've been really intentional about having worker owner voices in that strategic direction setting. We selected our policy. At that time, the closest thing to right of first refusal, which you've had on our platform with the Valley Alliance, was a co-determination bill, but people weren't going for it. People said co-determination, just having workers on corporate boards, is not like a worker-owned cooperative. It can be a total waste of your time to have workers sitting on a corporate board if they don't have veto power, and that's not enough. Worker ownership is far more expansive, and so opportunity to own is really a conversion to worker-owned cooperatives. It's not making corporations act a little bit more accountable to workers. It has that direct governance by workers and the ownership by workers, and therefore it's different. And so co-determination got shot down. This is not co-determination. This is conversion to worker-owned businesses. I think a lot of people are excited about this because there's a lot of support for, not enough, but there's quite a bit of support for seeding new cooperatives, cooperative entrepreneurs. So how do we grow the cooperative ecosystem? Some people say we have to seed, grow. So growing existing businesses, like lots of the co-ops in our state are sort of nascent. How can we make sure that they provide more jobs and move more goods and services and money through our economy? So growing cooperatives is really key, and you're doing good work in that area. But this conversion seems to be an opportunity that we've not really tapped into as much. And it'd be really great to give more people access to quality jobs and dignified work through worker ownership by conversion of existing workplaces to worker-owned businesses. So that's kind of what this is about. I will say that, people were kind of interested in this right of first refusal concept. There were people back in the day in our steering committee who kind of thought that it would put people in a really sort of antagonistic position with selling owners, and really sort of said we should steer away from it at that point. And then there's others more recently in our coalition who've been really loud saying, hey, this is the need of working class people. Class war, let's get into it. And then one thing that really changed the game is we have these periodic meetings, in Rise to Own It, we're hearing, okay, what are our limits to being cooperative entrepreneurs? One of them is cost of housing and stuff like that. Our steering committee said, hey, don't get totally lost in rent control. Yes, we need affordable housing to be cooperative entrepreneurs, but we're going to support that, not lead that. So stay in our lane. But with regard to this, we do, how do we stay in our lane is something that we've been trying to figure out. So trying to learn from the solidarity economy movement. It's really cool to hear the little bit that I heard about the history that you were sharing, Adam, knowing deeper about worker ownership and the history of that is very helpful for us. We have these nexus meetings looking at solidarity economy, housing justice, and worker ownership, and the nexus between those sister movements, how we can support each other without losing our track. And one of the ways that we've been supporting each other is just, okay, we need workers. Working class people need housing. So let's stand up for housing justice whenever those bills come our way. We as a coalition have agreed to support housing justice, but not lead. In addition, just learning about, where worker ownership is a really great example of solidarity economy has been good for other people. And in addition to that, just learning about how the housing justice movement has been making strides. So a very similar bill to right of first refusal in the housing justice world is TOPA, tenant opportunity to purchase. And this is when, a property owner is going to sell the property, it's a law that would make the property owner have to inform the residents to see if they want to, have the right of first refusal and own their own building. So this has, it's a beautiful thing. It's come very close in Massachusetts twice and not passed at the governor's desk. But many people are really interested in this. It did pass in Washington State, though, pretty recently for trailer parks. And so we had a Nexus meeting where we had Carl talking about the VOC right of first refusal bill. And then somebody from Washington State, somebody from Massachusetts talking about TOPA, and then somebody from Washington State sharing about how they had won TOPA because of the framing. So instead of restricting the rights of sellers, framing it such that we are creating more opportunities to sellers. They called it in Washington State opportunity to compete. And so all the capitalists got behind that. Republicans were super into that. And Republicans who helped push for this to win also helped to start the Washington State Office for Employee Ownership. So I think it's really interesting that there often is bipartisan support for employee ownership and worker ownership. At federal bills, we've even had Republican Representative Tarr sign on to our bills, like Mass CEO. So I think in this world, it's a really beautiful thing when we can all cooperate on anything, and it's really cool that we can cooperate on cooperation. Anyways, so this is some of the backstory. So we took a lesson from that framing. Ethan here said, hey, that sounds super capitalist. Can we talk about ownership and people? And so we said, okay, not opportunity to compete. We'll call it opportunity to own. And that puts people a little bit more center. And I think I'll let you tell the more recent history to the rest of the team here. But it's so exciting to be pushing for this thing that could help a lot more people access worker ownership. It's super hard being an entrepreneur. I really admire everybody who is in that space, been there myself, very proud of some of my successes and, had my limitations in that role. But I think that this could really be a game changer for a lot of people's lives. And it's exciting to be collaborating on this together. So I'll just leave it there. I will upload, if I can, into the chat our little fact sheet about this. But I think it'd be really great if Ethan could share a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of the bill. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, Ethan, please introduce yourself and then talk about, if you want, I can bring the slide back up or I can leave it down, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, you can bring it back up after I'm done introducing myself. That would be great. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ethan Tupelo, he, him. As I think Adam briefly introduced at the start, I was a worker owner of Pedal People for 7 years, something like that, and was the VOC rep for a while, and then became a VOC board member, and have continued in that role since I moved to Boston for a teaching opportunity at Boston College. One of the major things I tried to focus on when I was on the VOC board, which I'm still trying to continue now, is really like working in this collaborative way with other groups. You may remember before I moved, I was trying to do and make a bunch of connections with people in Springfield, and since then, like definitely trying to cross that also like west-east divide, and I feel like now I'm able to do that a lot more now that I'm in Boston, even though strangely all of the meetings of everyone in Boston are still online, so it feels like it sort of hasn't changed that much, but like still trying to make those kinds of connections for us. And I really think that like to get a lot of these like big picture things done that have been a part of our agenda for a long time, we really need to be working with other groups, especially with other groups that should be our close allies. And so that's kind of like the role I've tried to take on in representing VOC at these co-op meetings and in other capacities as well here. So that's kind of like my background and what I'm trying to do here with these connections. Yeah, so part of that also has been not just working with co-op in general, but working on some of their subcommittees. So in coming up with what we wanted in this bill, I was a part of many meetings in the legislative working group, especially towards the end of last year, where I was trying to represent Fox's position on this as much as possible. And I feel pretty good about the bill that we have that has come out of this. That it's something that's introduced for the first time. I think that's something that we can clearly support. And also, can bring together lots of people across the states as well. And really, again, I think we have to do that because I think, as people know, we have very friendly legislators in Western Mass towards worker cooperatives that we can often rely on their support. But at the same time, that's only a handful of people in the state house. So we're going to need to reach out to people in other regions and things like that if we want to actually get anything done. But it is also great that we have like the Western Mass people basically signing up to co-sponsor stuff, usually among the quickest out of anyone in the states. And that's a result of all of the work that we have done over the decades. Yeah, so Adam, if you could bring up that slide again, I can just briefly go over like some of the details of this bill, just so I give highlights of it. So as Sarah mentioned, we're calling it shorthand opportunity to own, but even the official title is slightly different. So if you're talking to legislators, to say, it's officially an act promoting entrepreneurship through employee ownership. And I know like some of the words in there or some of that framing may not sit that well with some of us in worker cooperative land of not necessarily wanting to think of ourselves in quite that way, but thinking about who we're trying to appeal to, and especially how the framing of this is legitimately a very pro-business perspective, could bring along a lot of supports to actually get this passed. So I really want to think about that with the framing, and especially like with the materials that Sarah has put in the chat. We had Representative Worrell and Garbely introduce us in the House, and Senator Mark from the Berkshires introduce us in the Senate. They're basically currently like the same version. So the highlights of this. So first of all, this is aimed at small businesses, which we had a lot of debate on how to figure out what that was. And we decided just to use the definition that the Small Business Administration uses. And then also carved out a few exemptions of who this applies to. The major one being for inheritance or sale to immediate family. We thought like that would be like maybe too much of an ask if like someone wanted to like pass on the family business and then like they're being sort of stuck with like, oh, well, the workers have to get involved or something like that. And this is just like to direct family members. So those are kind of like the major exclusions that are there. But there are two major parts to the bill. One of them is kind of like the incentives, and the other one is kind of a modification of this something that's like right of first refusal. The incentive part is that for owners who are selling to their workers, they're exempt from up to $1 million in state capital gain tax obligations for selling the business. So that's potentially a huge amount of money for them. And it depends on the value of the sale and the business and things like that. But that's potentially a huge carrot right there for them to say like, oh, maybe I should consider selling to my workers more seriously. The other major component is a sort of modified version of opportunity to own, of right of first refusal. And I'll just highlight like some of the major like points of like how this process would work as the bill is currently written. One of them first is just like informing the workers that a sale of the business is pending within 7 days after the decision is made. I know Zvok has dealt with many different instances of like, workers just like not being told that this is happening in the first place, or like being on a very compressed time scale. So like just that notification is a big step. We also think that Mass CEO, that's the Center for Employee Ownership, should be notified, and they could potentially then function as like a hub of connecting people with information or the broader ecosystem that would help to provide funding and other logistical support for worker co-op conversions. After that, workers would have 30 days to notify the owner if they intended to purchase, and then 180 days after that to secure the financing to either meet the assessed market rate offer or if the business has like another offer, like the workers have that amount of time to try to meet that, to sort of meet that fair market value rates. And then to qualify for all of this, also, there's things there about defining what a worker-owned organization would be. And for the purposes of this bill, we said that means that they need to sell at least a majority stake in the business to the workers' organization. And then if there is partial ownership still, the workers must retain the sole voting rights in decision making. So it's kind of like the essence of how VOC has really pushed for defining what the basis of worker ownership is, even though we're not necessarily using our favored parts of incorporation within the Massachusetts code. I think we still have like kind of the essence of what we consider a worker cooperative in there for the purposes of like being a member of VOC, for example, but still recognizing there may be a diversity of ways that people may choose to incorporate or organize internally with their bylaws and things like that. Again, these are just like the highlights of it. But, hopefully in there you can see a lot of what we've talked about in VOC about right of first refusal there in this bill. Also, of course, with lots of other things that comes out of this like large scale coalition work that we do on a statewide level. Yeah, I think that's good for an overview. Yeah, I'll pass it back to Adam, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan. And I know that was a lot of information for people, but I just wanted to, again, thank Ethan and Sarah for all their work on this, and then kind of open up the dialogue for questions specific about this or for other legislation that people think they might have. But I did want to take just a couple minutes to see if there's any questions specifically about OTL.
I'd like to add one more thing, if that's all right.
Please.
So one thing that Carl really convinced us more than a lot of, was that the thing about right of first refusal is that it's really an organizing opportunity, because if you know that you will be informed, if you know that the opportunity to put in a bid is coming, then you can start to organize way in advance. And so that really convinced a lot of us that, hey, this is a doable, helpful change. And then the last thing that I wanted to add was that one special thing about the bill is that it honors labor contracts. So some people, I think VOC has a history with union co-ops, and we think this is really interesting and important, as an avenue for really amplifying worker ownership, organizing, and really embodying dignity at work, which doesn't always happen so smoothly in co-ops, even though we aspire. So anyways, one thing that's special about this bill is that it honors labor contracts. So if it is a union workplace, those contracts would continue into the cooperative phase. And, there's a lot of people who are excited about that on the union side, particularly from UFCW, for example. And, I think the feeling is that, well, maybe there's a role for trade unions to play in helping us, really be organizing, disorganized workers in an ordinary workplace to be organizing towards ownership. And that could really also help amplify down the line. I'd love to keep learning about your experience with unions and co-ops aside. So that's just one more thing I wanted to add. Thank you.
No, thanks, Sarah. And I was just going to put it in the chat, but I'll just say that how worker cooperatives and any kind of worker buyout, but worker cooperatives specifically, to get that language in there about what it really means to be one, and then also to have labor contracts as part of this. There has been some examples of potential buyout happening, and the relationship to the existing union wasn't so sure, and that can be that was tempered with. So this avoids that, and I think does show our commitment to the labor movement as a whole, and unions are a critical part of that. Collective Copies was a founding member of VOC, and they're with United Electrical Workers since they started. So yeah, thanks to both of you. So any questions from people for Ethan or Sarah about this? We should have this maybe even later, so there'd be less questions and thoughts. Well, one thing that I actually was a little curious about, and I know Sarah and Ethan, you both kind of mentioned this, and again, thanks to everyone who put up with the link not being totally correct on some of these leads. Really sorry about that. Is kind of how it worked at the coalition. And I think you actually had a democratic process with that, right? You had people vote about what had to happen. I don't know if you want to, could you share about that so we all know? Or did I miss that when you were talking about it at first?
Yes, indeed. So we had democratic input at a variety of opportunities at various parts in the process. We did a roadmap just showing how we're going to put our tandem bicycle up to our cooperative utopia. And so one important thing was making sure that our members really had the chance to share their ideas for what kinds of policies they think would be helpful. And so, the first thing that, so people put all kinds of things out there, but above and beyond the most named thing was right of first refusal. People wanted to see right of first refusal. That was the most popular thing. So after people just put their ideas in there and we sort of aggregated them and we reflected that back to the team, then we had members of the legislative working group. So Ren and Matthew and Ethan are all on that. So members of this legislative working group then sat down and said, hey, okay, let's do some research. Let's take a deep, good look at what we can actually do with these policies. And, let's study together. Where has this been done before? Where hasn't it been done before? What's the promise? What are the costs and benefits? What are the pitfalls that we expect? Is this winnable at all? Is this worth, putting our energy in? Because we want to win in our lifetimes, hopefully. And so we had a team of people do an assessment into all of the top options in that were nominated by our membership. And so right of first refusal was way up there on the top, so people spent a lot of time really looking into it. And there's a lot of big opinions about it too. So, having the time to hear everybody and to research what's out there from Canada to different states was a really good process. I think it'd be great to sort of maybe let Matthew and anybody else weigh in here, because a lot of research was done. And then the process then, once you've done a ton of research, then that lives in the heads of a few people. So people put that research into a multi-page document and then tried to summarize that and then make that available to people to then vote again at the annual meeting. And then in addition to having that document, people sort of verbalized, this is the summary, the pros and cons of each of the policies that you've nominated that we can see, and now vote on our policy platform after we did the research. So this is, we talk, what is democracy? It's a lot of things. We should totally have that question sometimes, but I feel like this is our most democratic policy platform yet, because we've really, we've researched and reformed and reshaped this together in a more participatory way than ever before, and had key inputs from a broader collective at special moments, and then reached back to particular stakeholder groups and said, hey, would this work for you? If, from your vantage point, what does this look like? And I will say, from worker owners, this was the loudest ask from worker owners as well. So I'm happy it's there.
Thanks, Sarah. Ethan, I didn't know if you wanted to kind of tell us more about, you had brought up a couple of things that are related to this, more on opportunity to own, or if either of you two wanted to talk about what it's been like to reach out to legislators and what their response has been, if we can help with any of the legislators that haven't jumped on yet from Massachusetts.
Yeah, I don't think I've that much more to add other than, yeah, this I've been, like I said, trying to represent VOC in this process. I've usually been the one voting for us, like usually asking for input on some key points. But yeah, so there's that, and I am pretty sure, although Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, that like some version of either incentives for workers or for businesses to sell to workers or right of first refusal, those things combined were like the top voted things at their annual meeting of like things to pursue. There were some other things also that may be worth talking about that, like, you know, we could consider helping with or pursuing. Yeah, I also think I don't have that much more to say about Western Mass legislators, are the ones, of course, that we have the most impact in. Like most of them respond to us very quickly whenever we reach out to them. I don't know how many other people have experience with this, but you know, we have relationships already where, you know, if we mention VOC or pedal people, like even if it's outside their district, like they know who we are and you know who we're talking about. So like that's again like lots of work that we have done. Yeah, and Bren just wrote in the chat the legislators that have already signed on to this, and also like I should say also like you know this isn't just us in Western Mass who's working on this as well. Bren, who's also in Western Mass, has been a big help with this as well, along with other people. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
I'd love to add one thought, and then Sarah, if you have thoughts, please jump in, about the sort of educational component. And a lot of us were thinking about this, not because I don't see this as some kind of first time people are thinking about worker cooperatives on the whole, especially for our world, but I do see this as a great opportunity for us to try to relate to a lot of legislators outside of the Joe Comerfords, Mindy Doms, and Lindsay Sabadosa, et cetera, who are kind of familiar with the scene just because it's around in other parts of the state. And we've been in touch with them saying, hey, we're really happy you supported this. Please contact us. And one or two have. And we think that that's actually a great way for us to say, hey, you want to keep jobs and infrastructure in Massachusetts, and we hope to bring all of this to Vermont. There's some legislation that we want to work with, but anyway, you want to keep jobs here, you want to keep that. This is one of your ways to do it, and this is kind of an easy slam dunk. There's people who might have feelings about this. There's not a whole lot, Sarah and Ethan can correct me here, of direct opposition from a particular party. This is not something where we're kind of fighting something. Anyway, we want to build relationships with legislators. Thank you, Ren. Absolutely will have you speak in a moment, as well as you, Eli, to try to say, yes, working with us is a great thing, and we're keeping jobs, and we're building democracy, and we're building wealth. But also, we want to make sure that you're educated about what co-ops are really doing for future steps. Thanks to both Ren and Eli. Ren, please, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. If there's time, I'd love to just speak to that a little bit about
Please.
what opposition might be thinking.
Yes, yes.
So Ethan and I are both on the Mass Center for Employee Ownership Advisory Board. And when Ethan made the presentation to the board last month, we got a fair amount of rapid opposition from some of our ESOP friends. And I would say that one of the big things that kind of like threatens the landscape that they stand on is how quickly the decision for employee ownership is framed in this bill. One of the things that was said is that this decision takes a long time to make. There's a lot of moving parts. It kind of I don't know, my sense is that it makes it seem too simple to become employee owned, and it may take some of the wizardry out of it. Certainly, there was a proposal, a push for focusing more on tax breaks, tax incentives. That's kind of like the standard, business as usual way of addressing things. The majority owned component may be a sticking point, for some of the bigger businesses to get to loosen their reins, so to speak. So that, and the 30 days notice. One other thing that I heard said was, if there's a buyer for the business and then they have to hold for even 30 days or the 180 days, they could lose a deal. So those are some of the things that we've heard, and it's good to know when we're talking with our electeds or other potential, advocates of the bill.
Thank you, Ren. Eli, please, and then if anyone wants to respond to or speak more to what Ren brought up.
Yeah, that was really interesting, Ren. But my question was if this bill, and this might not have any relation to it, but if the bill has any relation to business owners that decide to close a business that may otherwise not need to be closed for like financial reasons or something. If this bill has anything in relation to that, or if it's like a separate topic.
Yeah, others might want to speak more on that. Like, how do we make sure that we're not selling our workers lemons is a big thing. So due diligence, enough time for workers to do a real assessment is important. And we were talking to somebody in Baltimore who was sort of saying that, like the housing market has realtors, and a realtor is this amazing wraparound service person who knows how to get the legal support and the loan, in time to be able to seal the deal. And yeah, knows the market and all of those things. So I think it's really key that workers can have a really good assessment so that they're not getting a business that should be closed. And that was actually also some of the earlier pushback from the Co-op Coalition. Actually, my first day with the Co-op Coalition, Laura from the Cero Cooperative was like talking about this, and Laura was very worried that the previous bills we had seen had just had a 1-week period for workers to say yay or nay. And so this extension of time allows for a bit more thinking. But as Carl informs me, like really the thinking should begin way before. Like right now, it's also kind of like public awareness. Like a lot of workers aren't even thinking that, oh, I could own this business one day. And, like if you know that opportunity to make a bid is somewhere on the horizon, particularly if it's a lot of elder business owners of the boomer generation. This is all for small businesses, and they talk about the silver tsunami right now and all these elder business owners looking to sell. 80% of the businesses that go on the market don't sell. So this is really an opportunity if people are looking to sell a business. But that's a huge concern, making sure that we don't put workers now owning something that is just going to drag folks down. That's a big deal. And so I see there's a big role for associations and, integrated support. And I could see, VOC has done several conversions before. How does policy really position those who are already doing conversions to do it more easily? We're hoping that that's what this leads to, but that's a great concern, and hoping that the broader window frame of a month instead of 1 week also allows for more due diligence so that we're checking. It's a great concern. Yeah, that's really, really key. And to add to what Ren was saying about the pushback in the Mass CEO Advisory Board, we saw in Rhode Island where they were pretty inspired by us, and they said, hey, we want to do something similar, and they filed a very similar bill. And then there was pushback from folks who are like, hey, don't restrict owners. Don't tell me what to, like, I don't know, it's primacy of capital somehow. Like, like how do we make sure that, owners can do whatever they want whenever they want with their business? Like there's people out there who sort of feel like that's the right of an owner of a business. And then there's others who feel like, well, it's a lot more. You have responsibility to people. And so hopefully this, I feel like us asking for that extra time is worth the ask, but we have to make the argument. The one other thing that I've heard could be a potential concern, we talked to a group that did this assessment. So people talk about this great wealth transfer that's going to happen with the boomer generation, aging out. And where's the money going to go? Probably the same olds, the corporations that are amassing all the wealth, unless we step in and make this, resources for the people. Basically, in their interviews to a lot of aging business owners, people were worried that if they informed the workers that they would sell, then the workers would look for another job. And so I think that goes to the sort of sensitive antagonistic relationship between workers and sellers that some of our earlier coalition members who aren't there anymore have stated. So I'm curious, over time, it would be great to think about how we can allay that, I think if it's across the board that at any business, that you would have the opportunity to maybe have a bid, then it's a little bit less intense, to say, oh, I'm thinking about selling. But it is a valid concern, I want to work in a steady work environment. And so how to make that notification less of a threat to the seller. A lot of people who are buying a business want it to be in good working order. And so it helps to have clueless workers to just keep doing the same job. But, how can we have worker ownership even before a conversion so that, people will be dedicated to the success of the business? I haven't figured it out, but I have heard that concern, and I think it is in some way valid. So we should think about it and get ahead of it. And in the nature and the spirit of getting ahead of it, it'd be great to collaborate with VOC folks to tell stories. I don't know much about your conversions. I've chatted a bit with Charity and Carl about the conversion of Oxbow. Apparently that's not the best example, like case, story of a conversion, because it kind of, even though it was an LLC in the beginning, it kind of always wanted to be a worker-owned co-op. But, if you have stories to tell, we have folks on our team who'd love to partner with folks on your team to get some press attention on that. And your examples are really powerful because, it's not primordial soup. You've done it, and you've done it in our state. And, I think it'd be really cool to lift up some of your examples for more people to learn from. And I think one of the most important things about this bill is it opens possibility. And so, I hope that we complement that with awareness and that we get ahead of the opposition that could come. There's a lot of opposition to TOPA, the tenant opportunity to purchase. And weirdly, a lot of that comes from small business owners, small property owners. So they're worried that that somehow their rights would be restricted if they had to notify their tenants that they are selling their business. Again, it's like our culture of ownership and what ownership means. It's a bad analogy. We're trying really hard not to be lumped in the same pool as TOPA because it's a bit controversial, even though we've learned a lot from TOPA. But getting the framing right, getting ahead of the counter narrative would be really great. Lifting up good stories like yours when you're ready would be a wonderful thing to do together.
I would love to just jump in on that, Sarah. I'm ready right now if you want to schedule calls.
Yes.
And I understand what Charity and Carl are saying, but I actually think that's demure. Everybody talks about how worker cooperatives are important, who are in the movement. Everyone in the movement thinks they're great. It takes special people to actually sell the business. And that's who Oxbow was. So I understand that nothing's perfect and that there's, I'm sure that there's stuff that needs to be kind of figured out. I think the real story is that people came together to make that a worker cooperative, and that can really easily be lost. Also, just to say that, yeah, there's many more examples. And to go back to Eli's concern, that's why I'm going to keep coming back to co-op associations and why they're critical. Because there have been businesses in our region who wanted to sell, and workers would come to us and we would have to say, you have to know how to do this. You have to know that you need a third-party valuation. Don't just take their word for it. It doesn't matter if you know them, because this is money. You have to have 5 years of books. So there's ways to do this and ways to have mistakes, and that's something that we're really trying to focus on with VOC. Let's give this a couple more minutes, and then we want to hand out our awards before we let people go at 6:30. But any kind of closing thoughts on OTO? Yeah, Eli, I would love if people were if ownership was handing out information. I can't imagine that that would be an enforceable thing, but this is why I think having a relationship with Mass CEO is so critical, because we want to get the information right away. We want to get that as soon as we can.
Yeah, I wonder if you could frame it as a way to support the owners and not the workers. So that, like, frame it saying, like, here's the information sheet so that your owners don't jump or your workers don't jump ship and your business is actually more marketable, or, you know, you got to speak their language, unfortunately, I think.
No, you have a real point. I mean, that's the best way to have dynasty. That's the best way to like keep people's jobs. It's the best way to have the infrastructure stay in this town. Usually people care about that. But I think a lot of times at the end, the dollar signs tend to be what everyone says you should focus on, and we're all just human beings. But again, we see Vox sees the marketplace as a place for justice and solidarity. We do not want to wait for people to start behaving better. We want to have as much as we can with legislation and partnership to say, no, this is what should happen. This is how it should go. Workers should be able to do this so they can turn into the collective copies 40 years later. They can turn into all the other co-ops that have been alive for decades.
I would also add that if a business is thinking of closing, which I think is now very common for people who are retiring, like all of the incentives, or the main incentive that we talked about in this bill, would apply to them if they're selling to workers. So that could be a way for them to exit that would also be financially beneficial, if, you know, even if that's the primary thing they're concerned of, and potentially selling, you know, to their workers in the process there. So I'm just thinking of so many examples in Northampton, where I lived for about a decade, where like businesses on Main Street, all different types, close. Often workers like at restaurants who, you know, it's like, oh, I worked here for a decade and found out just like when a newspaper person called me that, you know, the business is closing down, and like so there's like no amount of notice or time or like that. So like just thinking about like, you know, the future of like, if this if this law is in place, like what are the systems then that are set up to inform people about it, assuming that they know like this is part of the process, or at least like an opportunity that they could take advantage of, like that changing of the mindset, and also building up like our own infrastructure to handle all of these requests, like that can potentially make a big difference.
Any closing thoughts from Sarah or Ethan, and then we'll hand out our awards. Well, I'm very thankful to both of you. It's very kind of all the work you did. It's very kind of you to spend time with us today.
Yeah, thank you. We're already advocating together. You know, let's continue to speak together for common cause. This is great.
Yes.
It's great co-creating. Let's continue.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, Ethan's doing the we're good nod, so I'll let that go. All right, we'll just hand out our awards, and then we'll go to the end of our meeting. Okay, so just to wrap on that discussion, the reason why we kind of frame this with all the stuff about housing co-ops and credit unions is because we are the leaders who are going to make change. That's why organizations like VOC exist. That's why we're partnering with Sarah's coalition, so we can be effective and bring the voice to larger dialogues. A lot of those examples we brought up earlier, when they're directly fighting fascism, when they're directly fighting particular instances that are harming their lives, they work together, and we are a nexus of where those ideas come from. So we want to be a place for new partnerships, new collaborations, and new co-ops. In that vein, we want to thank a lot of our partners for all the support they do, and there's a couple who stand out this year. We have 3 different awards. And I want to hand out the first one. This is the 2025 Jesse Owens Fastest Buck Payment Award. We are a dues-based organization. We're very thankful for all of our supporters, but it's really great to have dues paid early. And that this year goes to Collective Copies. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Collective Copies. Of course, you're welcome to say something, but I think I know you too well. So I'm just going to keep going unless you want to say something. We're really thankful for Collective Copies being a founding member. Our next one I brought up before. UMass 5 has earned this one, the 2025 Emilia-Romagna Cross-Sector Collaboration Award. We brought up Emilia-Romagna before. They got co-ops of all kinds working together, and I think that's why they can make advances so quickly. This is for Freedom Credit Union. Thank you. It's the second credit union to get the award. We're so thankful for them. They do excellent banking services for us. They've got really great opportunities for commercial entities. Again, most credit unions don't. And we're actually going to work with Larissa to try to bring this to Vermont so that happens. And they were kind enough to send some slides about their history today. And I didn't know that they were founded by workers until then. And our last one is in honor of Julie Graham, who was a mentor and supporter of VUC very early on, back when no one really thought it was ever going to be anything. And this is for a culture of solidarity and enjoyment. And Eli, I'm so glad you're here today because we want to give it to the Compost Cooperative. You and Revan have been such a light for us, and we're really happy that you're working with us, and we feel really lucky that you kind of joined our organization. So I don't know if you want to say anything, Eli. Please don't feel like you need to.
I'll just say that I'm feeling more and more appreciative of VOC every day and excited to be a part of it at a deeper level. So I think that goes for all of us at the co-op. So thank you.
Speaking of thanks, I'm really thankful to everyone here today. We've got a couple more minutes. Any closing thoughts? Okay, so please keep your eyes out. We'll do a little report back today from the annual meeting later about today for the annual meeting. We are going to continue on to try to get support for this bill, so you might hear from us, the House bill and the Senate bill. We're also going to be working consistently this year and next year to bring more attention to conversions especially, and to supporting existing worker cooperatives. Those are two of our core activities. And we're also going to have at least 2 more interns this summer from the CEC program. Again, thanks to Artem for great work squeezing so much in. It was really impressive. And I know you got a couple of weeks left, but a lot of your work has already been completed. So, okay, if there's not any other final thoughts, anyone from the board, you want to say anything? Any guests?
I'll just say thanks for everyone showing up, especially after a long day. It was a really fun, informative meeting, and really I just enjoyed learning more about the whole stuff going on in Massachusetts, and hope more of that will start happening in Vermont.
Thanks, Larissa. Thanks, everybody. We hope you have an excellent night. Stay in touch.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all. Solidarity. Ciao, ciao.